Raonic targets ninth win over Sock in Washington quarterfinals. Milos Raonic vs Jack Sock City Open Tennis Live. Raonic targets ninth win over Sock in Washington quarterfinals. Third seed Milos Raonic aims for a ninth victory over Jack Sock when the pair square off in the City Open quarterfinals in Washington, D.C., on Friday. Can former City Open champion Milos Raonic extend his dominant record over American firebrand Jack Sock to reach the semi-finals in Washington, D.C., on Friday? It's been a disappointing season for Raonic in 2017, but the big-serving Canadian loves competing in the American capital, and after winning the title in 2014, he's gunning for a second piece of silverware at the ATP 500 tournament. Raonic still isn't playing his best, but he's come through a couple of tough battles, and he now targets a ninth win over Sock, who also hasn't been playing well recently but is starting to show some signs of life in Washington. Raonic and Sock take to court on Friday. Still trying to get his season off and running in 2017, Raonic is starting to generate some momentum at the City Open, but there's still a long way to go for the Canadian to call this tournament a successful one. Slipping to number 9 in the world after finishing last year at a career-high number 3, Raonic hasn't been able to produce his best tennis this season, but a first title in 20 months in Washington, D.C., would be a fantastic foundation in which to build his U.S. Open series on, especially with his home event the Montreal Masters coming up and its field being decimated by the withdrawals of Andy Murray, Novak Djokovic, Stan Wawrinka, and Marin Cilic. Raonic has come up against a couple of veterans in his 2 City Open matches so far, firstly accounting for Nicolas Mehmet in 2 tie breaks before taking down Marcos Baghdatis in another tight straight-setter on Thursday. Raonic was forced to save 2 set points against Mehmet and he had to do the same against Baghdatis, recovering from 4-6 down in the opening set tiebreaker before riding that momentum into the second, breaking the Cypriot twice for a 7-6, 7-6-3 victory. Normally you'd expect Raonic to ease past those 2 opponents, but the fact he's been dragged into battles in both illustrates how he's struggling, at least compared to his brilliant form of last year. One of the most meticulous and driven competitors on the ATP World Tour, the fact that Raonic can't seem to find his best tennis, partially because of injury in 2017, but his level has undeniably dipped, must be driving him crazy. Raonic's 20-month title drought is the longest out of any player inside the top 10, while he's barely made an impact at the big events this season, folding meekly in the Australian Open and Wimbledon quarterfinals to Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, while Pablo Carreño Busta eliminated him from Roland Garros. Raonic is also yet to advance beyond the quarterfinals of any Masters 1000 event in 2017. Meanwhile, Jack Sock is also attempting to snap a poor run of form at the City Open this week. Straight sets wins over Marius Copil and Jared Donaldson marks the first time Sock has won back-to-back matches since the Rome Masters, with the American really struggling to replicate his early season form on the clay and grass of Europe. Sock started the season with a bang, winning his second ATP title in Auckland, while he didn't have to wait long for another piece of silverware, capturing his third title in Delray Beach after Raonic withdrew with injury just prior to the final. Sock translated his good form to Masters 1000 level soon afterwards, beating Grigor Dimitrov and Nishikori on the way to his first ever semi-final at the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells before going down to Roger Federer. A run to the Miami Masters quarterfinals, this time ended by Rafael Nadal, followed, but after a semi-final loss in Houston to Steve Johnson, Sock won just 3 matches in Europe, suffering a first-round loss at the French Open to Jiri Veasley and a second-round defeat at Wimbledon to Sebastian Haffner. The 24-year-old also struggled to get going upon his return to American hard courts, going down to Kyle Edmund as the top seed in the Atlanta quarterfinals last week. But there's opportunity in Washington, D.C., for Sock to make up for lost time, and working with new coach Jay Berger, a former world number 7, the American has declared his intention to play more aggressively and use his doubles experience to finish points off quicker by coming to the net. That mindset will ensure an even more fast-paced match than usual against the big serving Raonic. Sock hasn't had much success against the Canadian, but he did snap an 8-match losing streak against him in their last meeting at the Shanghai Masters in 2016. The problem for Sock is that Raonic, at least at his best, can match his power and aggression from the baseline, which puts more pressure on their respective service games. Raonic more often than not takes care of his own serve, and that by and large has been the difference between the pair. Both players desperately need the win and a deep run to restore some confidence, but with their record and history, you have to lean with Raonic to emerge triumphant once again.